It's your boy JJ Domination, and we are here with notable Day 2 and Day 3 picks in the 2020 NFL Draft, NFC East edition. So we're going to be covering the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Giants, and the Washington Redskins 2020 NFL Draft haul from Days 2 and Days 3 of the draft. So we're going to go ahead and get started here with the Cowboys. We have a few more to do, and then I'm going to do a episode, not really an episode, but like a video, I'm going to be doing a video talking about whose stock is up and whose stock is down from the start of the re-signing period prior to free agency all the way through to this part where the draft has happened, and now we're looking at the classes and whatnot, and we're gonna see whose stock is up and whose stock is down. That'll come out later in the week, probably Friday, who knows. But right here we're gonna start with the Cowboys, and their notable Day 2 and Day 3 picks go as followed. Cornerback Trayvon Diggs, a second rounder out of Alabama. Defensive tackle Neville Gallimore, a third rounder out of Oklahoma. Center Tyler Biadasz, a fourth rounder from Wisconsin. And defensive end Bradley Anae, a fifth rounder out of Utah. A lot of people are saying Dallas had the best draft in the 2020 NFL Draft. A lot of people saying they had the best draft haul, and they do have a great argument to be made, but the way people are talking about it as if, you know, it's almost as like, you know, if Dallas just had that much of a better draft than everyone else, and that's where I disagree. If you do think they're one of the best teams that had the best draft haul, then sure, you know, I can buy into that, but the way people talk about it, especially in the media, they make it seem like Dallas just had that much of a better draft than everyone else, and that's where I disagree. But anyway, let's talk about Trayvon Diggs. He was a guy that could have potentially snuck into the first round, but he ends up going in the second round. Really good value right here, obviously, getting Trayvon Diggs, and that's the reason a lot of people are saying the Cowboys had the best draft. It's because of the value they got, which is hard to deny. Again, other teams out there had just as good, if not better, drafts, in my opinion. But Trayvon Diggs was a good find. Is he going to be an outright replacement for Byron Jones? I'm not 100% certain about that, but it is good that they were able to at least get one corner on the roster to play with Chidobe Awuzie and all the nickel corners they have, Anthony Brown and Jordan Lewis. Neville Gallimore in the third round, good defensive line depth out of Oklahoma. They signed Dontari Poe for 1 year. They have Tristan Hill, who they drafted in the second round last year. And they have Gerald McCoy. So defensive tackle, not a problem anymore in Dallas. They have at least two guys that they know for sure they can rely on in Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe. And they have two young guys who could probably gel and become something in the future in Tristan Hill and Neville Gallimore. So pretty interesting to see there. And then they actually trade up with the Philadelphia Eagles. It's interesting that, you know, two teams in the same division would do that. But the Cowboys ended up getting Tyler Biadasz out of it, a late fourth, talking about like the compensatory fourth round pick out of Wisconsin. The reason he slipped so far, he was probably being rumored to be a potential first rounder, even a second rounder. The reason he slipped is because of injuries, and, you know, with everything going on with Corona, kind of hard to truly get a true, like, physical and a feel of his true health or whatever. So he ends up slipping, unfortunately. I think that, you know, if everything was kind of normal-ish in the country, I don't think he slips that far, but good find, you know, out of Wisconsin, similar to Travis Frederick, who I believe came out of Wisconsin, right? Yeah, similar to Travis Frederick in terms of, like, him coming out of Wisconsin. Obviously, Frederick was a late first-round pick. Tyler Biadasz, a fourth-rounder, and the compensatory picks. But maybe you can develop him to be your future starting center. Who knows? Did you just potentially find your franchise center in the fourth round? Who knows? And then finally, defensive end, Bradley Anae, a fifth rounder out of Utah. Just a nice, like, high-energy defensive end. Interesting character, likes to do stunts and stuff, jump off cliffs and stuff. Just a nice little interesting piece of depth for the defensive line. Nothing too crazy, but maybe he does develop into something pretty good. Maybe play special teams right away. So overall, yeah, I do think the Cowboys had a pretty damn good draft, but I mean, was their draft really that much better than everyone else's? I mean, that's the part that's kind of getting to me a little bit. Let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. I have 5 picks that I had written down for them, and it starts with quarterback Jalen Hertz, a second rounder out of Oklahoma. Safety / linebacker Kavon Wallace, a 4th rounder out of Clemson. Offensive tackle or potentially offensive guard Jack Driscoll, a 4th rounder out of Auburn. Wide receiver Quez Watkins, a 6th rounder out of Southern Miss. And offensive tackle or potentially offensive guard Prince Tega Wanogho, a 6th rounder out of Auburn. So Jalen Hertz is the pick that has caused slightly less controversy than the Jordan Love pick selected by my Green Bay Packers. You know, with the Rodgers one, you can justify it. He's getting up there in years. He can't play forever. Carson Wentz is like 27 years old, and his extension is kicking in this year. The contract extension that he got. So this is just all sorts of interesting. Apparently the Eagles, number one, it looks like they want to use him in a Taysom Hill role, which, you know, I don't think you draft a quarterback in the 2nd round to do that, right? Like, you would think, you know, why would you draft a quarterback to play him as Taysom Hill in the 2nd round? That's something you can get in undrafted free agency, which the Eagles did in Khalil Tate, you know? So I don't understand the thought process there. And they're trying to move Khalil Tate to wide receiver. You could literally have him do the Taysom Hill shit. You know, with Jalen Hurts, to me, he's more than that. I was rooting for Hurts to get drafted to the Steelers, or even the Patriots, but he goes to the Eagles. Pretty interesting. The reasoning is they didn't want to, you know, they missed out on Russell Wilson. They tried to trade up to get him, and Seattle took him. So I guess that was their reasoning, but pretty interesting pick. It's one that definitely caused a lot of controversy, similar to the Jordan Love selection. Safety / linebacker Kavon Wallace out of Clemson. You know, kind of a poor man's Isaiah Simmons. You know, if you missed out on Isaiah Simmons, you got his teammate Kavon Wallace, who kind of does some of the same stuff. It'll be interesting to see what he plays full time. Will he be a safety? Will he come down in the box and play some linebacker? My guess is he'll be a safety. They announced him as a safety when he got drafted, so I'm assuming he's probably going to be a strong safety. Good depth, we'll see with Malcolm Jenkins gone. Will he get to play some strong safety? Will he be the starter, or will they put someone else over there? We'll just have to wait and see. And then they go with an offensive lineman, Jack Driscoll. So in that trade with Dallas, they come away with Jack Driscoll. Dallas comes away with Tyler Biadasz. But Jack Driscoll, a pretty smooth tackle prospect, you know, good footwork, good pass protector. For a guy that's hanging around here in the 4th round, the Eagles know better than any other team. Number one, offensive line depth is important. And number two, injuries happen a lot. If any team can relate to that, it is certainly the Philadelphia Eagles from last year at least. And getting offensive line depth is not the worst thing in the world. You can develop these guys for a few years. And when Lane Johnson gets older, Jason Kelce gets older, Brandon Brooks gets older, all of a sudden now you have guys that can come in and fill in those positions potentially down the road. So it's not the worst idea. And then wide receiver Quez Watkins, just a nice speedy receiver, a deep threat for Carson Wentz. This team also made a trade to get Marquise Goodwin as well, like during day 3 of the draft. So they've made a lot of moves to that wide receiving core. Gosh, just stay healthy, you know, just stay healthy. And then they take a flyer on Prince Tega Wanogho. Out of the 2 offensive line prospects from Auburn, between Driscoll and Prince Tega, Prince Tega is the guy who, you know, they view as like the upside guy. I think he played some left tackle for Auburn, and you know, he does have some upside. I think he has the best chance to kick inside the guard and be a better starter between the two. So maybe he competes for that left guard spot, and maybe he wins it. Who knows? And then all of a sudden you got Andre Dillard at left tackle and Prince Tega Wanogho at left guard, I should say. And then you have Jason Kelce, Brandon Brooks, and Lane Johnson as your center, right guard, right tackle trio. So pretty good haul from the Eagles, in my opinion. Their draft is getting heavily ripped, but I think the Eagles did a pretty solid job. The Giants, I have 3 picks written down for them. That is safety Xavier Mckinney, a second rounder from Alabama, offensive tackle / offensive guard Matt Pierre, a third rounder from Uconn, and center Darnay Holmes, a fourth rounder from UCLA. For Xavier McKinney, what makes this interesting is Landon Collins actually was drafted in the second round, Alabama safety, with the 36th overall pick, and it's happening again. Xavier McKinney, second round safety, 36th overall pick to the New York Giants. I just think that's pretty interesting. Obviously, they're 2 different styles of safeties. Landon Collins better in the box against the run. Xavier McKinney a little bit more versatile, can line him up at either safety spot or put him at nickel corner. It's interesting. They got a lot of young defensive backs now, and obviously we'll talk about that more with Darnay Holmes. It'll be interesting to see what his role is in this defense. I imagine they probably want Xavier McKinney to be the Devin McCourty for the Giants defense. So, you know, the Devin McCourty from like the Belichick defense. But we'll see how that pans out. And then they take a swing on an offensive tackle right here, Matt Pierre from Uconn. It's been a while since Uconn has had a good football player. The last one being Byron Jones, really, that kind of stood out. And then Anthony Sherman. And there's like a nice, decent, undrafted defensive lineman for the Jets who's played a little bit. But Matt Pierre right here, pretty smooth pass protector as well. He actually used to be a tight end, I believe, and then he put on some weight, learned how to play with his weight, and still maintain the footwork, which is definitely important. Nate Soldier, of course, getting up there in years. This team did take Andrew Thomas in the first round. So if Pierre is able to develop and step in and play at a solid level, all of a sudden you got 2 young franchise tackles for Daniel Jones. All of a sudden you got Andrew Thomas and Matt Pierre. That could be pretty nice. 2 guys who are pretty good in pass protection. Andrew Thomas much more of a better run blocker because obviously Georgia being a run heavy team just makes sense. And then finally cornerback Darnay Holmes, a 4th rounder out of UCLA. Good cornerback depth. He has a good story as well as to how he's got here. You know, ESPN, they got to milk out all the stories, paint the negative picture, and then slowly build you back up. But Darnay Holmes, good swing right here at a corner in the 4th round. They did a similar thing with Julian Love last year, moved him to free safety, and he actually played pretty solid at free safety. Julian Love, that being. So, good swing here for Darnay Holmes. All of a sudden, this secondary, it's young. They got some guys who need to emerge. If they can just strengthen up the pass rush, I think they'll be in a better spot. But let's finally wrap this thing up with the Washington Redskins. Their 4 picks, I wrote down 4 of their picks, goes as followed. You got running back / wide receiver Antonio Gibson, a 3rd rounder out of Memphis. Offensive tackle / offensive guard Sadiq Charles, a 4th rounder out of LSU. Wide receiver Antonio Gandy Golden, a 4th rounder out of Liberty. And linebacker / safety Kaliki Hudson, a 5th rounder out of Michigan. So the Antonio Gibson pick is interesting because obviously the Redskins have Adrian Peterson, Darius Geis, Bryce Love, and now Antonio Gibson comes into the fold. They did have Chris Thompson, but he hit free agency. They didn't bring him back. And I think Chris Thompson actually recently signed with the Jaguars like a couple days ago. So now all of a sudden the running back depth chart is Peterson, Geis, Bryce Love, and Antonio Gibson. He can also play some wide receiver. He did that a lot at Memphis. So he's a nice, interesting piece to this offense. We'll see how he gets utilized. And then I assume Sadiq Charles will play left tackle now that Trent Williams is out the door. It sounds like he's going to play left tackle. I think some of these LSU offensive linemen are a little bit overhyped. Sadiq Charles is fine, but he's not really Joe Burrow had a lot of pressure from the left side. Sadiq Charles is the left tackle. Lloyd Cushenberry the center. Like, their offensive line was not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but maybe they come in here and they play well. I do like Sadiq Charles a little bit more than I liked Lloyd Cushenberry. So we'll see. We'll see how it turns out for Sadiq Charles. And then they go with wide receiver Antonio Gandy Golden, a nice little small school receiver from Liberty. very interesting. This wide receiver room has gotten interesting. Of course, Scary Terry, aka Terry McLaurin, he broke out last year at the Senior Bowl, comes in, as a third-round pick, ends up playing his ass off, plays pretty well. And, of course, this team in the 6th round took my boy Kelvin Harmon, who I thought should have been like a 2nd-rounder or potentially a 3rd-rounder from NC State. And now they got Antonio Gandy Golden. If this trio of young receivers can develop, that's going to be good for the future of the Redskins. Their wide receiver room, very young, very interesting. Of course, Terry McLaurin being the better of all three. So we'll see. I mean, it's an interesting receiver room now. And then linebacker / safety. More so, I think, making the full conversion to linebacker. Khaleke Hudson, a 5th rounder out of Michigan. He originally was a strong safety, but he ended up slowly making that full-time conversion to linebacker. And, I think he'll be a special teamer right away, and a very good one at that. But, they obviously signed, like, Thomas Davis, for, like, a 1-year deal. And they declined the 5th-year option on Reuben Foster, who is another middle linebacker. They have Corey Holcomb, Sean Dion Hamilton. So they have some solid linebacker depth. But when Thomas Davis is out the door and potentially Reuben Foster out the door, maybe Khaleke Hudson could be the future inside linebacker there. We'll see how that pans out. But yeah, those are the notable Day 2 and Day 3 picks for the NFC East. The next one will be the NFC North. Cannot wait to talk about my Packers. It'll be pretty interesting. But hopefully you guys enjoy, and peace out.